The Seahaven Sapphire mystery. The salt-tinged breeze carried gossip through Seahaven's cobblestone streets as Rosie Chen stepped off the morning bus. The quaint fishing village stretched before her like a watercolor painting, but the animated conversation between two elderly women immediately caught her attention. "Gone without a trace," one whispered. The Seahaven Sapphire, right from the museum display case. Poor Mrs. Weatherby is beside herself. Rosie, journalistic instinct tangled. She approached with her warmest smile. "I'm visiting from London. What's this about a missing sapphire?" "Oh, you're in for quite the tale, dear," the woman replied. "Our village's most precious heirloom has vanished. Captain Mordecai Blackwood's sapphire necklace been in the museum for 50 years. As the women bustled away, Rosie noticed a tall figure in paint-splattered overalls emerging from the harbor office. He had the kind of gentle face that belonged in a children's book. "You look like you've heard about our drama," he said, extending a paint-stained hand. "Félix Artuel, local artiste. And you are?" "Rosie Chen, travel writer and apparently amateur detective. Tell me about this sapphire." They walked toward the museum together, Felix proving an engaging storyteller. Captain Blackwood founded Seahaven in 1847. Supposedly a reformed pirate who discovered this cove during a storm clearing. The sapphire necklace was his most treasured possession. Deep blue stones with an inscription, "Where the sea meets the sky, truth lies." At the Heritage Museum, they found chaos. Mrs. Weatherby, the silver-haired curator, stood beside an empty display case, speaking rapidly to an overwhelmed young constable. "He was there yesterday evening when I locked up," she insisted. "This morning, the case was still locked, but the necklace was gone." Felix introduced Rosie, who immediately began investigating. "Has anyone else had access recently?" "Just Timothy, our cleaning helper, and 2 visitors yesterday," Mrs. Weatherby replied. Dr. Emerton, a historian, who spent age examining the case, and Miss Thornfield researching maritime history with a fancy camera. Rosie and Felix exchanged glances. "Let's check with the locksmith about keys," Rosie suggested. Old Monsieur Cogswell's shop was filled with mechanical curiosities. "Museum key copies?" "Oh yes, I made one last month for Dr. Pemberton. We had proper authorization from Mrs. Weatherby letterhead and everything." Mrs. Weatherby's face paled when they returned. "I never authorized that. But I did give Dr. Pemberton blank letterhead for a research grant application." They were working together, Felix realized. Why such an elaborate scheme? Rosie had been thinking. The inscription, "Where the sea meets the sky, truth lies." What if it's not just decoration? What if it's a clue to something hidden? Mrs. Weatherby's eyes widened. The lighthouse. That's how visitors described the view from Blackwood Point, where the captain's homestead was. Racing to the lighthouse, they spotted 2 figures examining the foundation. A nervous man in tweed and a red-haired woman in expensive clothes. Dr. Pemberton and Miss Thornfield, Mrs. Weatherby whispered. They approached carefully. Miss Thornfield stood defiantly as they confronted her. "The inscription led you here," Rosie said. "You think Captain Blackwood hid something?" Dr. Pemberton found his voice. "Doyce, that necklace contains information about a significant archaeological discovery. Blackwood buried artifacts that could rewrite maritime history. So you stole it? Felix asked. Borrowed it, Miss Thornfield corrected, reluctantly producing the sapphire from her handbag. We needed to examine the inscription properly. Mrs. Weatherby studied the returned necklace. There are tiny markings on the back I never noticed. References to the lighthouse keeper's log, Dr. Pemberton explained. The entry that describes where Blackwood buried his collection. Back at the museum archives, they found the 1847 lighthouse log. October 15 described a ceremony of new beginnings, where the captain did commit his past to the earth beneath the old oak, the ancient oak in the cemetery. Mrs. Weatherby murmured. Legend says it grew from an acorn Captain Blackwood brought from his travels. As sunset painted the harbor in brilliant colors, they stood beneath the old oak's spreading branches. Using a borrowed metal detector, they discovered a sealed iron box. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was Captain Blackwood's personal journal, no records of plunder, but detailed accounts of maritime rescues and his transformation from pirate to village protector. He really was reformed, Felix said softly. These are rescue records, not treasure maps. Dr. Pemberton nodded respectfully. This changed everything we thought we knew. Captain Blackwood was one of the earliest maritime rescue operations on the English coast. Walking back toward the village, Mrs. Weatherby wearing the safely returned sapphire, Rosie reflected on the day's adventure. She'd come for a travel story and found something far better. Captain Blackwood would be proud, she told Felix, as they watched fishing boats return with the evening tide. His real treasure wasn't gold, it was the truth about his character. Felix smiled, gesturing toward the peaceful village. And now Seahaven has an even better story. The reformed pirate who became a hero, and the sapphire that led to the truth. Mrs. Weatherby chuckled. The tale of two thieves who became historians, and the travel writer who became a detective. This will be our best summer festival ever. As stars appeared over the harbor, Rosie knew she'd found more than a travel story in Seahaven. She'd discovered a community where mysteries brought people together, where even thieves could be reformed, and where truth was always worth uncovering, just as Captain Blackwood's sapphire had promised all along. Annoncia.